What's going on, everybody? It has been quite a while since I just generally made a video because I've been on a slight vacation. But here we are with the ROG Ally X, and it is actually pretty damn good. Now, this unit is not mine, it's actually a family member's ROG Ally X, but they wanted me to use it for the general impressions to see exactly how different it is from the original ROG Ally. And the first thing I noticed is, yeah, that battery life is incredible. The original ROG Ally had a 40 watt hour battery, while the ROG Ally X has an 80 watt hour battery, which is one of the biggest batteries in the handheld market today. But the ROG Ally X comes with a lot more than just a bigger battery. This thing has quite a few upgrades over the ROG Ally original. First of all, its triggers feel slightly flatter. It's not as pointy as the original ROG Ally. The analog sticks feel a lot taller and just bigger and better, which says a lot because the original had great analog sticks that were a bit touchy, I do admit, but Asus fixes that with the ROG Ally X by making the thumbstick slightly grippier. And they pretty much feel exactly like an Xbox Series X's controller's analog sticks with that grippy feel. And I do appreciate that. I've tested out the analog sticks with numerous games. As you can see, there won't be exact benchmarks, but this is just the overall first impressions for this device and how it plays games. Now, there are even more upgrades. The ROG Ally X has two USB-C cables. One is capable of over 40 gigabits per second transfer rate, which means that you can use eGPUs with it. Now, you can't really use eGPUs as fast as the original ROG Ally X's proprietary cable, of course, because that cable is humongous. But with this tiny USB-C, you'll be able to use eGPUs to a certain extent. Now, I don't know the exact number and how fast these eGPUs work with the ROG Ally X opposed to something like the One X player, or even the Legion Go for that matter. And I'm sure the Legion Go's port is a lot faster than the ROG Ally X's, but there are two USB ports, and I do appreciate that with this model. And honestly, one of the features that were added in the X model that I didn't expect to like as much are the bigger grips. I thought they would feel too big and make the ROG Ally feel a little too heavy. Well, in my opinion, it does feel quite a bit heavier than the original ROG Ally. So that is the truth. It does feel a lot heavier, and it is slightly thicker. It has more of a bump in the back, which you can take in any way, but the grips do help in a lot more ways than I thought it would. In terms of comfort, I feel like I can hold the ROG Ally X forever. It's just extremely comfortable, especially compared to the original ROG Ally with its pointy edges and flat grips. The ROG Ally original is more akin to the Nintendo Switch with its flatter grips, but the Nintendo Switch had no grip, so I guess I can't really compare that. But there isn't really a bigger handheld out in the market that I can compare the original ROG Ally's grips to because they are the slimmest, in my opinion. Well, maybe there are some mini handheld devices that it can compare to, but I really don't care for those. I like the bigger form factor handhelds that you can actually hold in your hand, such as the ROG Ally X. And yes, it feels incredible. I think the grips are just amazing. I have no complaints. And going into the performance, the added 8 gigabytes of RAM, notably for the eGPU, and the fact that you can allocate some of that memory to the video memory and your main memory, the fact that it includes 8 gigabytes of more RAM and faster RAM at that, makes the performance have a noticeable boost on any of the games that I got my hands on. The main reason why the included RAM is important is not because of gaming, it's because of multitasking. There are so many times where I just found myself switching between 6 to 8 gigabytes for that performance boost, but also that multitasking boost. Now, with the 24 gigabytes of RAM included with the ROG Ally X, you don't have to worry about that anymore. You can just put 8 gigabytes of virtual memory, and you don't have to worry about the extra memory for Windows and the ROG Ally itself. It's just all paved out for you. And sometimes having 8 gigabytes of VRAM isn't the best thing, so you might want to switch it for specific titles, but you're not going to see that stupid message that tells you, well, you need 16 gigabytes of RAM at least to play this title, but you also need 8 gigabytes of VRAM to play it. So there's always that pull and push with the original ROG Ally with its allocated RAM. And luckily with the ROG Ally X, you won't have to deal with that anymore, or as far as I can tell. And in terms of screen quality and sound quality, the ROG Ally X is exactly the same as the original. I think the screen doesn't really need to be upgraded. It's fantastic, especially when you don't have a screen protector on it. I think the screen looks wonderful. Now, if you haven't seen the ROG Ally X before, you might be wondering exactly what the price would be for it. And well, you're going to have to pay a whopping $800 for the ROG Ally X. Now, considering everything that it comes with, which is pretty much just slightly tuned features, a heavier system with a bigger battery, the $800 might not be worth it in comparison to the $600 ROG Ally original. But if battery life is really that important to you, I will attest to this, that the battery is in fact a huge upgrade. It's something that is noticeable while you're on the road, or if you don't want to pull out a power bank like I've had to so many times. But if you just want to get a power bank that lasts you like 10 hours and you have an extra $100 to bleed through, then I suggest getting a bigger power bank if you're just going to be on the road and not in an airport. But if you want something that's 80 watt hours that'll last you about 4 to even 6 hours on average. And yeah, I got about 4 hours playing something in performance mode, but sometimes I got 3 hours and 30 minutes. So it doesn't always pan out as much. So the battery doesn't always perform as well as you would want it to, but it is a huge upgrade nevertheless. With the original ROG Ally, a lot of people hated the battery, not including me, but I did see what people were talking about in terms of how short the battery life can feel. And the battery life isn't exactly short, it's how much time you have to spare. And I mainly use power banks with it. I don't really walk around and play the ROG Ally. Even looking at your phone and walking around can be a hazard these days. I mainly just find a place to sit and play the ROG Ally. So sometimes I pull out a power bank which will last it an extra 2 hours minimum. And that's about the same exact amount of time that the ROG Ally X will last on average compared to the original ROG Ally. It's not a huge jump, but it is a significant one. And I think this is the step in the right direction for handheld gaming. And I've heard that a lot of people are running into dead pixel issues. I haven't seen a dead pixel in my family members' ROG Ally X model, but I do believe that people are running into this issue as it is a common issue with handheld devices. But yeah, I'll be testing this a lot more over the course of the week. I do have this for some time because they are giving me the hookup. I didn't want to buy an ROG Ally X for myself because, well, I just bought a $700 ROG Ally, so making an $800 purchase a little bit over a year after that is kind of nonsensical. So, it's been a great first impression. I've been enjoying the ROG Ally X just as much as I enjoy the original ROG Ally because they're not too different from each other, but the amount of upgrades and tuning that the ROG Ally X and Asus has displayed here is something that can't be ignored. I do 100% recommend the ROG Ally X. I think it's a wonderful handheld device, just like the original ROG Ally, with the added features and battery. And of course, the detail to not forget is the bigger SSD inside. The only thing about the bigger SSD inside, well, there's no bad side to it really, but while opening the ROG Ally X, because I had to switch up the SSDs for them to a 4 terabyte SSD, and that's a full-size 2280 Samsung SSD. This thing is so fast, but so expensive. I think the only bad side would be opening the actual ROG Ally X. It was a bit different from the original since it has a strip around each side of the system, meaning that the shell itself has a strip through it. So be careful while opening this thing. It is a lot more of a fragile process to open the ROG Ally X. I did hear from the start that it's more difficult to replace your SSDs, but ironically enough, you can place a lot more memory in there with a full-size SSD like a lot of people wanted. And so many people out there had a gaming laptop with a 2280 SSD inside already that they wanted to transfer. Simply putting that SSD into your ROG Ally X can just give you access to all of your games in such a short time. And I think that the upgraded 2280 slot in the ROG Ally X is phenomenal, but opening it up is really not fun. I mean, it's not my ROG Ally X, so I was very careful, but I was a little more nervous because the process wasn't as simple as the original ROG Ally. But yeah, if you were wondering about the SSD, there is a lot of room inside of the ROG Ally X, so you can put an SSD with a bigger heatsink inside, no problem. And this Samsung SSD, which I'll show in the video, has kind of a thicker proprietary heatsink by Samsung. So it has all the bells and whistles on top, and you can fit that thing inside of the ROG Ally X. And I've always wanted to do that with a handheld device, and the ROG Ally X has finally made that happen. Also, an important detail to mention is the change with the D-pad. The D-pad with the ROG Ally X is slightly bigger and more precise than the original ROG Ally. I think it's about 10% better than the original ROG Ally's D-pad. I really like that D-pad, but it is slightly too small for me sometimes. But with the ROG Ally X, the D-pad has a wider range of motion, and it's just made better. So what do you guys think of the ROG Ally X? Have you picked one up? And if you have, do you have both the ROG Ally and the X models? And I know it's kind of a dumb question, but which one do you prefer? I still prefer the original ROG Ally because of the color. Simple as that. And I love the fact that it's a lot lighter than the ROG Ally X and slightly thinner. But I do love the ROG Ally X, and I wouldn't mind having one for myself. Honestly, I might get one later on, just so I can place a huge SSD inside. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a good one. Later.